The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets as I burst through the clinic door, Max's limp body cradled in my arms, his golden fur matted with sweat and his breaths coming in shallow, ragged gasps. "Help him!" I shouted, my voice cracking like thunder in the empty waiting room. The kind of desperate plea that turns heads even in a town as sleepy as Elmwood, New York. But Dr. Vincent Hale didn't flinch. He just met my eyes with a steady calm that hit me like a lifeline, murmuring, "Bring him back here now," as if he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact storm. That night in early fall, with leaves turning the streets into a patchwork of fire, I thought I was losing everything. Max had been my anchor since the day Sarah walked out, leaving behind nothing but a half-empty closet and a rescue pup who'd somehow filled the void. I'd driven like a madman from our creaky Victorian on Maple Street, the radio crackling with some old Springsteen tune about broken promises, my heart pounding harder than the engine. Elmwood wasn't the kind of place where drama unfolded. Folks here fixed tractors and swapped stories at the diner. But that evening, it felt like the universe had decided to rewrite the script just for me. Vincent moved like he was born to it, all quiet efficiency and gentle hands, laying Max on the steel exam table under the unforgiving glare of the overhead lamp. He was in his mid-30s, I guessed, with that rugged jawline shadowed by a day's stubble. His dark hair cropped short like he didn't have time for vanity. His scrubs hugged his broad shoulders in a way that screamed, small-town hero, the kind of guy who'd probably volunteered at the firehouse and coached Little League on weekends. "What's his name?" he asked, his voice low and steady, like the rumble of a distant freight train. "Max?" I managed, hovering uselessly as he checked vitals, his fingers probing with a tenderness that made my chest ache. "He's 8. Collapsed on our walk by the river. No warning." Vincent nodded, slipping a thermometer under Max's tail without missing a beat. The dog whimpered softly, and I reached out to stroke his ear, whispering nonsense about fetch games in the backyard. Minutes stretched into eternity. Blood draws, ultrasounds, the hum of machines that sounded like judgments. Finally, Vincent straightened, peeling off his gloves with a snap that echoed in the sterile room. "He's fine, Lorenzo. Dehydration from the heat, maybe a touch of arrhythmia, but nothing life-threatening. Fluids and rest, and he'll be chasing squirrels by morning." Relief hit me like a wave crashing over rocks, but it carried an undercurrent I couldn't name. I sagged against the counter, rubbing my face, suddenly aware of how wrecked I must look. Jeans caked in mud, flannel untucked, eyes probably red from the tears I'd blinked back on the drive. Thank God, I thought. Jesus, Doc, I don't know what I'd do without him. He paused, those hazel eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that felt less clinical and more searching. "It's Vincent, and you look like you could use a once-over yourself. When's the last time you ate or slept?" I laughed, a brittle sound that bounced off the tile floors. "What's it to you? You saving strays now, or just moonlighting as a therapist?" "Something like that." He smiled then, a crooked thing that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and handed me a styrofoam cup of coffee from the ancient machine in the corner. Black, no sugar, just how I took it. We talked while Max dozed under a blanket, the conversation meandering from dog breeds to the best hiking trails up in the Adirondacks. Vincent had grown up in Elmwood, he said, the only son of a mill worker and a schoolteacher, back when the paper mill still hummed along the Hudson. Vet school in Ithaca, a stint in Albany, but he'd come home when his dad got sick. "This town's got hooks in you," he admitted, leaning against the sink. "Sharp ones." By the time I loaded Max into the truck, the rain had started, a soft patter that turned the world misty and forgiving. Vincent walked me out, his hand brushing my arm as he passed over a bottle of electrolytes. "Call if anything changes, or if you need to talk. Seriously, Lorenzo, you carry a lot." I drove home with the windows down, the cool air whipping through, Max's head heavy on my thigh. That touch lingered, warm and electric, like the first spark of a fire you know could burn the whole damn house down. The weeks that followed blurred into something dangerously close to normalcy, the kind Elmwood specialized in. Slow mornings with coffee on the porch, Afternoons wrestling Max through golden fields. Evenings at the Rusty Anchor where the locals nursed IPAs and griped about Albany's latest tax hike. But Vincent wove into it all, subtle as a thread pulling tighter. A follow-up visit turned into coffee at the diner, where he confessed his divorce 2 years back. She wanted kids. I wanted. Well, not that. And I spilled about Sarah, how she'd packed her bags after finding the letters from my college ex. The ones I'd never burned because they felt like proof I wasn't broken. "You're not," he said simply, his boot nudging mine under the table. No judgment, just that steady gaze that made me feel seen, really seen, for the first time since moving here to escape the noise of Brooklyn. We started running together at dawn, pounding the dirt paths along the river, our breaths sinking in the fog. He'd quote Whitman on the wildness of men, and I'd counter with Hemingway's Code of Quiet Grace, our words tangling like vines. One evening, after a brutal 5-miler, we collapsed on the grass by the water, shirts clinging, hearts hammering. His hand found mine, fingers lacing with a hesitation that broke me open. "Lorenzo," he whispered, voice rough as gravel. "I've been waiting for this." Our first kiss tasted like salt and river mist, urgent and unhurried all at once. It was the kind of moment that rewrites your map, the world narrowing to the press of his lips, the scrape of stubble, the way his free hand cupped my jaw like I was something precious. We didn't rush. God, no. It was stolen glances at the hardware store, notes tucked into Max's collar during checkups, nights on my porch with beers and stars wheeling overhead. Vincent became the rhythm to my days. The laugh lines around his eyes when he teased me about my terrible poker face. The way he'd hum old Johnny Cash tunes while stitching up a barn cat. For the first time, I let myself believe in second chances, in a love that didn't demand I hide the parts of me that scared the straights. But Elmwood wasn't Brooklyn. Whispers started like dry leaves skittering in the wind. Folks at the feed store eyeing us too long. Mrs. Hargrove at the post office clucking about, "That nice Dr. Hale keeping odd company." I brushed it off. Vincent did too, with that easy shrug of his. Until the night of the Harvest Festival, when the air smelled of cider and bonfires, and everything cracked wide open. We'd slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet spot by the old mill ruins, the river murmuring like a conspirator. His arms around me, pulling me close, and I was lost in it. The heat of him, the promise of more. "I love you," I breathed against his neck, the words tumbling out unbidden, raw as an exposed nerve. He froze, then pulled back, his face paling under the string lights strung through the trees. "Lorenzo." "Shit, I can't." The world tilted. "What do you mean, you can't? We've been." "It's not you." His voice broke, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "It's Emily. She's back. From Syracuse. We were engaged before the divorce, and now her family's here pressuring. The clinic's in debt, and they could." Betrayal landed like a gut punch, stealing my breath. Emily, the ex he'd mentioned in passing, the one who'd wanted kids. But this was a ghost resurrected, a life he'd half committed to before me. "So what, I'm the fling? The experiment while you play house?" "No. God, no." He reached for me, but I jerked away, the sting of tears hot on my cheeks. "It's the town, the expectations. My dad, he's dying, Lorenzo. He wants to see me settled, normal. If I lose the clinic." I laughed, bitter and hollow. "Normal, right? Because loving you, really loving you, is the abnormal part." Max whined from where he'd trailed us, sensing the fracture, and I scooped his leash, storming back toward the lights and laughter that suddenly felt like mockery. Vincent called after me, his voice swallowed by the night, but I didn't stop. Not then. The days after were a blur of numbness, the kind that settles in your bones like November chill. I avoided the clinic, let Max's checkups lapse, buried myself in freelance graphic design gigs that paid the rent but hollowed the soul. Vincent texted, "Apologies, please," fragments of poetry that twisted the knife deeper. I was wrong. You're my wild, my truth. I deleted them unread, but they haunted me, echoing in the empty house where Max's paws clicked too loudly on the hardwood. Climax came on a stormy Tuesday, the kind of gale that rattles windows and unearths secrets. I'd been at the river, skipping stones to drown the ache, when my phone buzzed. Vincent's number, a voicemail time-stamped minutes ago. Lorenzo, it's bad. Dad's gone. I need, please, the clinic. Now. I drove through sheets of rain, wipers slapping futility, arriving to find the parking lot flooded, lights flickering inside. Vincent was in the exam room, slumped over his desk amid stacks of unpaid bills, his face a mask of grief, eyes swollen, shoulders bowed under the weight. Max, who'd somehow sensed the pull, pressed against my leg as I stepped in, the door banging shut behind us. "You came," he rasped, looking up like I'd hauled him from drowning. "For Max. Not you." But it was a lie, and we both knew it. The air thickened, charged with unsaid storms, until he stood, closing the distance in 2 strides. "I chose wrong," he said, voice fracturing. "Emily's gone again, for good this time. I told her, told everyone. About us. About me." His hands trembled as he gripped my arms. "The clinic might fold. Dad's estate is a mess. But losing you? That's the real death. I was scared, Lorenzo. Of the whispers, the loss. But hiding. That's not living." Rain hammered the roof, a relentless drumbeat mirroring my pulse. I wanted to shove him away, to unleash the fury of betrayed trust. But his eyes, raw, pleading, held the truth of a man unraveling. "You broke me?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Made me believe in this. In us." Then yanked it back like it was nothing. It was everything. He pulled me into him, forehead to forehead, breaths mingling in the humid air. "I'm sorry. Let me fix it. Not with words, with time. With me, all of me." The dam broke then, not in anger, but in sobs that racked us both. His for his father, mine for the fragile hope we'd nearly shattered. Max nosed between us, tail thumping softly, a furry mediator in the wreckage. We sank to the floor, arms entangled, the storm outside raging as we pieced together what remained. Forgiveness, tentative as a truce, built on the bones of our shared wounds. Months later, as winter thawed into a hesitant spring, the clinic teetered but didn't fall. A fundraiser at the Anchor, beers, auctions, the whole town pitching in, kept the lights on, and in the quiet aftermath, Vincent and I found our footing. No grand gestures, just the steady work of it. Mornings tangled in sheets that smelled of pine and coffee, evenings walking Max by the river, hands brushing without fear. The whispers faded, replaced by nods at the diner, a quiet acceptance that Elmwood, for all its hooks, could bend. Love, I learned, isn't the fireworks or the fever. It's the choice to stay when the rain pours and the bills stack. Vincent taught me that, taught me to examine my own heart, scars and all, and find it still beating. And in the end, as we watched Max chase fireflies in the yard, his barks echoing into the dusk, I knew we'd built something human. Flawed, fierce, and utterly our own. Not perfect, but real. The kind of story that doesn't end with a bow, but with the promise of tomorrow's light.